Now, Democratic Congressman Adam Smith of Washington State is joining us right now. Look, it's not just some Republicans, but Democratic leaders, Schumer and Jeffries, are out there and quickly saying they agree with Musk that the bill is, as Jeffries reiterated, disgusting. Do you agree with Musk?
No, absolutely. On this one thing, yes, there's plenty to disagree with Elon Musk on, but just because you disagree with somebody on one thing doesn't mean you have to disagree with them on everything. And without question, this is a terrible piece of legislation. Look, it's a bizarre world. I've been in a ton of interviews talking about this bill with Republicans, and Republicans are like, the debt, the deficit, they're terrible, they're devastating for our country. And I don't necessarily disagree with that. And now they're voting for a bill that adds trillions of dollars to the debt. It makes no sense. It's they're trying to create this fictional world where the debt and the deficit matter, and you can vote for a bill that adds trillions of dollars to it. Now, it's a terrible piece of legislation on a whole series of levels, and I'm glad that Elon Musk has recognized that.
Look, Musk, as you just said, he's saying there's too much pork and too much spending. But some of your colleagues are concerned, as well as a couple of Republicans, including Murkowski and Collins, about the cuts to things like Medicare. So is it a mistake to sort of jump on Musk's side when, the parties differ over why the bill is so problematic?
Look, any political argument, whether you're talking about a piece of legislation or a candidate for that matter, people are going to have a lot of different reasons to support or oppose. You need to go after as many reasons as you can if you oppose the bill, and I do. And yes, the cuts to Medicaid, a variety of different cuts in there are also very, very problematic. But the mission is clear. If you oppose this legislation, defeat it. And Elon Musk's comments, I think, help build opposition to the bill. So that's what we want to do, is build comprehensive opposition to a bill that I and many others genuinely feel would be terrible for this country.
Is there anything in the bill that you do agree with?
I'm sure there is. I confess I haven't thought in that particular piece of it. I haven't looked through every last little aspect of it. I can't think of anything off the top of my head, to tell you the truth, except for one broad thing. I think the notion that we need to find some way to control spending. I mean, I think there are a lot of things we could do on healthcare that would make sense about delivering healthcare more efficiently, more effectively. The Medicare Advantage program is driving up the cost of Medicare and not providing good services to the American people. There's a bunch of different ways to save money. I don't think this does that effectively. And again, my big argument is on the tax cut side. If you support something, you ought to be willing to pay for it. And frankly, that's something that we as a country have struggled with, not just the Republican Party. I mean, the Republican Party is now talking about spending more money on defense. I'm on the Armed Services Committee. We talk about that a lot, and that may well be necessary. But how can you say that we're desperate to spend more money on defense and then cut taxes by $5 or $6 trillion? We've got this something for nothing mentality, and I think that's probably the biggest thing that Elon Musk is going after here, is nobody embodies the something for nothing mentality better than Donald Trump and the Republican Party as it exists right now.
I'm curious about this. Trump has now today doubled basically the tariff on steel and aluminum going into effect today. He's now saying that China is hard to work with. Can you give me some sense of what this means to you? Because Boeing is in your state. It is based there. It has a huge footprint. What will this mean to a place like Boeing and the workers there?
Sure, my constituents, my state, but the country. The approach that Donald Trump is taking to tariffs is going to have a very negative effect on the economy. I mean, first of all, the chaos and the uncertainty of it. It's on, it's off, it's on, it's off, it's here, it's there, it's this country, it's that country. You're trying to plan a business. A lot of people, and it's starting to happen, we're seeing it, they're sitting on their money because they don't know what the future is going to be. And it is absolutely going to drive up the cost of manufacturing. We manufacture a lot of things in this country with aluminum and steel. Well, those costs just went up. Certainly airplanes are part of it, but there's a whole lot of other things that we manufacture. The Trump administration's entire strategy on tariffs is doing enormous harm to our economy, without question. And yes, that affects my constituents, but I would argue it also affects the entire country, and we're seeing the results in the economic data.
Let me ask you lastly about Ukraine. We have seen these incredible pictures of Ukraine sending drones deep into Russia, hitting their air defense, and also blowing up a bridge, and then Russia responding. We have not heard anything from Donald Trump on any of this. Where do you see peace talks at this point, or ceasefire talks?
Well, what Ukraine released yesterday, their 8-point outline for what a fair peace deal would look like, is the framework that we ought to be working towards. And look, President Trump fundamentally misunderstood this conflict, well, for a long time now, but certainly since he got into the White House, by focusing on Zelensky and Ukraine and giving Putin a pass. Putin started this war. The only way it stops is if he chooses to stop it. And the only way to get him to choose that is to convince him that he can't win, that he has to accept a peace settlement. And what Ukraine did really drove home that point to Putin. It would be great if President Trump or Marco Rubio or somebody spoke out publicly about that and said, Mr. Putin, this is why you have to end this war. This is bad for you as well as bad for Ukraine and bad for the country. But look, for whatever reason, and it would take way too long at this point in the interview to explain why it is that Trump and the Republicans are so sympathetic to Putin, they viewed this as more a matter of putting pressure on Zelensky and Ukraine and just gave Putin a pass. And he took that pass to try to pursue his maximalist objectives. It is time for Donald Trump to change that, to say, Mr. Putin, stop this war. And if you don't stop this war, there will be consequences. Sanctions would be a great way to do it. Continued support for Ukraine would be a great way to do it. We send that message. I think that forces Putin to the table because it tells him that he cannot win to the degree that he wants to.